Let's get more on this with Gregg Roman. He is the director of the Middle East Forum. Greg, thanks for being with us. And France telling the U.S., release your peace plan or we will release ours. Now, France is denying this, but what do you make of that reported push from Macron?
Well, after every French election and a year into a French president's approval ratings dropping, in this case with Emmanuel Macron at 31%, they try to spin their internal disputes to an international position and offer some sort of peace plan. Sarkozy did it, Francois Hollande did it, Jacques Chirac did it. So this is a long line of French proposals landing dead on arrival every time that they try to be able to offer their own take on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I think Macron's proposal, if it is to come, will meet the same fate as his predecessors.
Well, that's just the point, Greg. I mean, aren't the sticking points the same sticking points? Would France or any other country really have a better chance of getting any kind of deal done?
I think the only country really that has a chance to get any sort of deal done is the United States in this case. Russia, the UK, Germany, the French, the Chinese, the Japanese all have had their own take on the peace process, but it all goes back to the same fundamental principle, that it requires a third party to negotiate between two parties, in this case, the Israelis and the Palestinians. But at the end of the day, until the Palestinians accept Israel's right to exist, which isn't done through negotiation, but which is the beginning of a negotiation, that's when you'll actually see the results. And I think it's taken the two parties, maybe a visit by Abbas addressing the Knesset, or Netanyahu finally saying, we've had enough of this leadership, let's negotiate with Palestinians who actually want peace, is the only way we'll actually see traction and a breakthrough in the current impasse.
Well, speaking about the leadership hurdle, we had a report released by Human Rights Watch recently detailing how the Palestinian leadership oppresses and abuses the Palestinian people. Now, it's not necessarily new information, but it is somewhat striking that finally Human Rights Watch is acknowledging this. Given that, do you think that perhaps the climate could be right to push forward some plan that would see new Palestinian leadership?
I think there's a process of devolution which is going on right now, where the U.S. administration over the last few months has acknowledged that true Palestinian political power rests in municipalities, in governates, in the small local councils, which are the building blocks of both Fatah and Hamas's power bases. So if the U.S. realizes that through economic aid projects, joint ventures between Israeli private sector and Palestinian private sector initiatives, that they can start getting political influence out of these measures, we'll find ourselves maybe bypassing Hamas and bypassing Fatah, and maybe having something where the Palestinians will realize their only way forward is to jettison the leadership which has been leading them into the abyss for the past 18 years.
And Greg, it does seem like economic incentives are a big part of the Trump administration peace plan. But another big part of it is the Saudi involvement, at least according to the reports that we have so far. So how does this dynamic with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, accused of arranging the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, and all the tension that it's caused between the U.S. and the Saudis, impact any kind of prospective peace plan?
I couldn't think of a better pivot for the Saudis to pick up on than a visit by Mohammed bin Salman to Jerusalem, or perhaps a Saudi ambassador, a diplomatic envoy, both visiting Ramallah and Jerusalem itself. I mean, if the Saudis want to move past the Khashoggi affair, they have to start looking inwards and outwards, whether it be towards regional peacemaking, which is something that I think would be a welcome initiative in Jerusalem and in the Knesset and the Prime Minister's office, or internally if they're to release their own political prisoners. There's a moment of opportunity here where everyone is speaking about how bad the U.S.-Saudi relationship is and can get. But if the Saudis pick up the opportunity and they realize that they made a tragic mistake that led to his death, perhaps tomorrow they can put this on the path towards peace.
So very quickly, how would they do this?
So I think that you have Saudi Foreign Ministry employees that have openly met with their counterparts in Israel, whether it be in Western European capitals, or even some rumors that this has happened in the United States. They could potentially have an Oslo-like backdoor negotiation or some sort of entreaties over the Red Sea, perhaps sharing commercial rights. We already saw the beginning of this with the Saudis allowing Air India to fly from Israel over Saudi territory and then back to New Delhi. So there's already been the start of us. Let's accelerate it and let's move it forward.
Interesting perspective.